Today I want to cover Gojo Satoru, given rising hype around the character due to his upcoming fight against Sukuna and his arc in Season 2 coming in July. But more specifically, I want to talk about Teen Gojo and what he could do if dropped into the Culling games. The Culling games is a game centered around collecting points through taking down other sorcerers as well as cursed spirits. In this video, we'll be tasking Gojo with beating as many sorcerers as possible, and to make things slightly more interesting, each character that Gojo gets by will be worth 5 points, so at the end we'll tally up these points and give his total number. Gojo within JJK is a character that doesn't need much introduction, being amongst the strongest and most popular characters in the verse even as a teen. Gojo in the Hidden Inventory arc is established as a powerful character, being widely known in the world of JJK and considering himself and Geto to be the strongest duo. On top of this, Gojo is shown to be a threat to Toji Zenin, the same Toji who had enough power to hold the Zenin clan's life in the palm of his hands, being stated and even somewhat shown through Maki to be able to kill them all without too much trouble. This is the same Zenin clan which includes the Hei. The Hei consists of semi-grade 1 sorcerers or higher, with the grade 1 being the step below special grade. The reason for saying this should be pretty clear, given how Maki was able to absolutely decimate each and every one of them, blitzing them, tanking their attacks, and bypassing the techniques. Toji, who was an equal to Maki, is also able to demolish Geto with what seems like little to no effort, deflecting his cursed spirit's attacks and basically just bullying him like a kid. Geto, who at this point is an established grade 1 sorcerer. This is all to basically say that Toji, even without using Maki's later feats, are likely just on the level of special grade, even if at the bottom of that grade. And Gojo, at this point in time, is heavily implied to be on the same level as Toji, with Toji not wanting to waltz in against him, and even believing that nobody outside of him is able to take down the Star Plasma Vessel while Gojo is around. There's also just a statement that flat out tells us that Gojo and Toji are on par with each other, which could have just been referring to Teen Gojo, due to the fact that Gojo is stated the strongest modern sorcerer, while Maki, who's just a flat out equal to Toji, is also around. Due to this, you can very easily say that the on par statement isn't a reference to his adult self, but what exactly makes Gojo this strong even at this age? That would be his limitless technique in 6 eyes. I'll keep the explanation of this technique pretty brief, given how I already somewhat covered this in my last video, which you should watch by the way. Gojo has access to the limitless technique, which comes with a technique that allows Gojo to stop anything and everything from touching him, outside of inverted spear and very specific techniques that bypass curse techniques like domain expansion and domain amplification. The way it does this is by forcing anything that comes in contact with it to converge infinitely, basically forcing a stop. But as a teen, Gojo's usage of this ability is slightly worse due to him having to use this technique manually instead of it just always being on. He also has access to blue, red, and purple. Blue being a magnetic force, red being a repulsive force, and purple being an imaginary mass and a mixture of these two things. His second major ability is his 6 eyes, which gives him an extremely refined manipulation of cursed energy, as well as allowing him to see cursed energy itself and understand cursed techniques details. Now that that's out of the way though, we can finally get into the topic of this video, with the first opponent being Higuruma. Higuruma is the first antagonist of the Culling games, being propped up as his smart prodigy, passing the entrance exam for the law department and the old national bar exam that preceded the law system. These two things made his peers look to him as a genius, but to him these were just easy and trivial tasks. This level of genius translated to his ability as a sorcerer, and is even more noteworthy than his law experience, being able to reach the level of a grade 1 sorcerer within just 12 days of awakening his curse technique. This allowed him to take down plenty of cursed spirits and at least 20 sorcerers. This is likely thanks to his domain expansion. Higuruma's domain expansion allows for a trial system to be laid out, and the judgment, which accuses the person pulled inside of the domain of a crime. After being hit with the accusation, the accused has to form an argument in their defense, while Higuruma has some evidence against you in a folder, and he forms his argument in response to yours. If the judgment says you're guilty, a punishment is immediately issued, with the only 3 punishments we know of being the confiscation of your curse technique, the confiscation of your cursed energy, or the death penalty, in which Higuruma gains an executioner's blade that kills you upon touch. All in all, Higuruma is actually a formidable opponent for characters like Nanami, Todo, and Yuji, but that's as far as he goes. Gojo would absolutely demolish Higuruma. Higuruma is able to be ducked and weaved by Yuji with no cursed energy. The same Yuji which right before this had an interaction with Naoya Zenin, a grade 1 sorcerer known for his incredible speed. This same Yuji was able to be blitzed and outsped by Naoya, while not even being able to land a hit on him. The reason this is important is because, like I said before, Maki is relative to Toji, and she was able to fight and swap hands with Naoya. This Naoya should actually be faster in this fight than against Yuji, as Naoya actually attempted to build up his speed during their fight, which he didn't do against Yuji. And after building up this speed, he gets 180 jaw punched by Maki. This should speak towards how fast Gojo is, due to the fact that if him and Toji are on par with each other, then he should at least scale to him somewhat in terms of speed, because if Gojo was a lot slower than Toji, he would just get blitzed and one-tapped by inverted spear and they wouldn't be on par with each other. Nor would it be good to question as to whether or not Toji could beat Gojo. Another reason to believe this is that prior to Awakening and prior to Toji's nerf, these two actually fight, with Gojo being able to tag Toji and throw him against walls. With that being said, Higuruma would likely just get blitzed and beat up. not really able to do anything against anything that Gojo has. And even if he can pop his domain in time, with Gojo being basically a blitz speed above him, it wouldn't matter all that much as Higuruma just wouldn't be able to hit Gojo while Gojo would be able to hit him. We also know that if it comes down to a battle of attrition, Gojo can fight for up to 3 days straight. Due to these factors, Gojo would simply badly outspeed and humiliate Higuruma, who just can't do anything against Gojo. Moving on, the next person I want to cover is Cursed Naoya. This should actually be one of the quicker sections given how this argument is already kinda laid out. Naoya is a sorcerer turned curse, being, like I said previously, amongst the fastest characters in the verse, reaching speeds just as fast as sound. After his initial battle against Maki, he comes back as a curse and gains a different appearance as well as some additional abilities, with one of these abilities being the power to propel himself through the air with his cursed energy. The speed acquired from this was actually able to completely outspeed and lay out Maki, albeit she was considerably weakened given how her mental state greatly affected her performance in the battle. Outside of this though, he also has tentacle-like arms as well as a somewhat durable outer shell, noted by Kamo to be barely comparable to Hanami's. He also keeps his curse technique prior to becoming a source, allowing him to divide 1 second into 24 frames and lay out movements in advance, and when completing these movements, amplifying his speed. He can also impose his 24 frame rule onto his opponent through physical touch, freezing his opponent if they don't move like Naoya. But this isn't even his best move. After being overwhelmed by Maki, Naoya is forced to pop his domain, and when he does, his ability to make you act out movements is opposed on your body in an even deeper way, going down to a cellular level and forcing you to act out movements on this insane scale. So how exactly does Gojo stack up? Well, like I said before, Gojo and Toji scaling relative to each other is kind of bad for Naoya, as Naoya couldn't catch up with or land any hits on a weakened Maki even at his top speed, while Gojo was able to land hits on Toji and react to him close range using moves like Blue. The biggest issue when it comes to Naoya isn't his speed but actually his durability, as it's hard to find a direct link between Gojo's attacks and Naoya's outer shell. But it isn't too far-fetched to say that Gojo, who should at least be grade 1 at the time, could do similar output to somebody like Kamo, who's semi-grade 1 and can damage Hanami's shell, the same shell that he thinks is far above Naoya's. Of course, you can say that it's unprovable to say Gojo can do more damage, or just as much, but it's just a lot more likely than not, especially with moves like Hollow Purple. Now, if we factor this in, things start seeming a lot more grim for Naoya, as Gojo outspeeds him and is able to damage him, while Naoya has absolutely no way to damage Gojo outside of Domain. But with Domain, this becomes a lot harder for Gojo, as Gojo at this point in time has no counter to a domain expansion that we know of, as we've never seen him use a simple domain. But I will say it isn't too unlikely that he does have one, given how he's hyped up as this prodigy of the Gojo clan. But since there's no way to say for certain, if Gojo does get caught inside this domain, he's more than likely just finished. But that's if he gets caught inside. Due to the scaling we've laid out, Gojo beating him is far more reasonable than the opposite. Now that that's out of the way, the next fight for Gojo will be Kashimo. Kashimo is a sorcerer from over 400 years ago, with our first introduction to him showcasing his insane bloodlust, killing a sorcerer in search of Sukuna, someone he desperately wants to fight. The reason for this is that Kashimo, like many other reincarnated sorcerers, are in search of a truly hard-fought battle, almost living for these encounters alone. This should kind of tell you what kind of person Kashimo is, and by extension what kind of fighter. Kashimo fights Hakari, a character with the hype of being able to beat Yuta, a special grade prodigy and one of the 3 heavy hitters which consist of Maki, Hakari, and Yuta. This would obviously put Hakari on the level of special grade sorcerers, and this same Hakari was getting his arms blown off, electrocuted, and damaged all around the board against Kashimo, with Hakari really only winning thanks to his infinite supply of cursed energy triggered by his domain, which in turn gave him the ability to heal from all the damage Kashimo did to him. But this should still speak towards Kashimo's general power, given how he was able to hold his own and even press Hakari at some points in their fight. The thing that makes Kashimo so strong isn't just his physical prowess though, but his electric-like cursed energy. Kashimo is among the few people known to have a somewhat special feel to their cursed energy, with the only person that we know of having something like this being Hakari, with Hakari's cursed energy feeling like a serrated bat. But in Kashimo's case, his feels like electricity and even discharges similarly to how electricity does when dropped into water. But the thing to note though isn't how it feels, but what he can do with it. Kashimo, through hitting you, is able to accumulate a positive charge onto you, with Kashimo having the negative charge on him. And when he discharges it, it shoots lightning at you that results in a can't miss attack, as the electricity just follows the charge. But even with all this, the biggest issue isn't if Kashimo can beat Gojo, it's if either one of them could even do anything to the other. And what I mean by this is, there's absolutely no way to scale Hakari nor Kashimo to Gojo or Toji, or anybody in between, as Hakari or Kashimo just haven't fought the same people Toji and Gojo have, nor do they have any statements relevant to the topic. So there's really no way to find a likelihood for either side to win. So for this matchup, it'll simply result in a stalemate. Moving on, last but not least, we have the Sukuna-obsessed sorcerer from 1,000 years ago. Yorozu is a sorcerer from the Han period reincarnated into Sumiki, Megumi's older sister and one of the reasons Megumi participated in the Culling games in the first place. She first shows up a little bit after Angel, another reincarnated sorcerer linked up with Yuji and Megumi. Yorizu sits in silence, posing as Megumi's sister until she finds her opportunity and strikes, using 100 points given to her by Megumi to add a rule and then leave. But as she's about to dip, she tells Sukuna to come and find her so that her and him can finally fight. Shortly after this, Sukuna makes a few adjustments and shows up in Megumi's body, where the fight begins immediately. Yorizu and Sukuna swap hands, reacting to each other's techniques, dodging and weaving each other's attacks, with Sukuna telling us that he's not going to use his shrine technique in the fight. This causes Yorizu to go angry, and this is where we get an explanation of her curse technique. Yorizu's technique is construction. She has the ability to wield a liquid metal that she can change the shape of, being able to replicate any substance that she can recognize. She uses liquid to make things like tendrils to attack her opponent. She can also create an insect armor that allows for max curse energy efficiency. Inside of this armor, Yorizu gains a speed and strength increase, allowing her to punch and kick Sukuna around. Now you could obviously say Sukuna is holding back, but at one point he actually attempts to block one of her attacks, which it kinda tells that he doesn't want to be hit. But in response to this, she moves around his divine dog and kicks Sukuna in the face. These two things should tell us that Yorizu can at the very least keep up with Sukuna, and even hit him when he's trying to react. What really matters out of all these techniques though, is her True Spear and domain expansion, with the True Spear essentially deleting whatever it touches, or whoever touches it, and her domain expansion amplifying this technique to an even higher level, making it a sure hit effect. When hit with this, you basically will just die, no questions asked. And when it comes to fighting Gojo, this is really bad for him, as like I've been preaching this entire video, Gojo scales to Toji and Toji scales to Maki, with all three characters being of a similar caliber. Sukuna was able to go toe-to-toe with both Yuji and Maki, blocking both of their attacks and vice versa, getting tagged and out-reacted at certain points by Yorizu, up until he started using his Shikigami more efficiently. This would at least put all of these characters in a similar playing field, with Yorizu having a much better arsenal than Gojo, because even if she can't hit him, she can always resort to her domain expansion, which would simply kill Gojo upon entrance, as like I said before, Gojo has no domain countering attacks that we know of at this point in this series, and it'd be someone ready to just grant him one. The only option Gojo would realistically have is Hollow Purple, but as we saw in the recent chapters, this move wasn't just some durability getting one-shot kill move like the True Spear, as we saw Sukuna actually be able to withstand it to a certain extent. Even with Hollow Purple, can't really say this would one-tap kill Yorizu. So with all of this being laid out, Gojo would probably just lose as he's similar in strength to her, with arguments for him being weaker, as well as not really having the arsenal to take her down in the first place. With that being said, I want to thank you for reaching the end of this video, and if you enjoyed, I hope you like and subscribe.